Tetris. It was quite simply the most addictive and universally accessible puzzle video game of the 80s and 90s, and it still holds its own today amongst the glut of puzzle games that exist now. Since it was unleashed in the world in the mid-1980s, it has appeared on countless computer machines and video game consoles. It was even the pack-in title for the Nintendo Game Boy when it released in 1989. Both Nintendo and Tetris were two of the most influential forces in all of video gaming in the late 80s, so it made sense that the two would combine forces to make Tetris a Nintendo console exclusive. Nintendo purchased the rights to license the game for its line of video game systems and began development of both NES and portable Game Boy versions at the same time. Atari, who had been releasing unlicensed video games for the NES under their Tengen moniker in order to circumvent Nintendo's strict licensing practices, developed their own version of Tetris, which released to stores in May of 1989. Due to it being available roughly half a year before the licensed Nintendo version, it enjoyed a few months of success as the sole NES Tetris game. Nintendo quickly caught wind of this and took Atari to court over the matter. Both companies believed they owned the license to Tetris, but the court ruled that Nintendo was the sole owner of the license. As a result of this, Atari was ordered to recall any stock of the game on store shelves and in warehouses. Legend has that Atari destroyed roughly 300,000 Tetris game packs. Not surprisingly, debates still occur as to which NES version of Tetris is better overall. Were owners of one version shortchanged by not having access to, or even knowing about the other version? Today I'm here to settle that score. This is Versus, where I take two video games, it could be a game and its sequel, or just two games from which many correlations could be made, and I compare and contrast the two to see which one is the overall better option. Today on Versus, it's Tengen's Tetris versus Nintendo's Tetris. Well, let's start with gameplay. I don't reckon these titles will vary too much in that category, but you never know. Tengen's Tetris certainly has the Russian mind game motif done to the T, from the flashy title screen with St. Basil's Cathedral in the distance, to the distinctive Cyrillic backwards R, the music, to even the Russian performers who dance after clearing a round. I enjoy this aesthetic to an extent, but I too tire of the plain black background after a while. The gameplay itself is everything I expected it to be. Tetris blocks, or tetrominoes as they are officially called nowadays, drop randomly from the top of the board. The goal is to simply match the pieces together to form a solid line which will vanish once that task is accomplished. If the player fails to do this enough, pieces will continue falling until they overflow the game board's container, which will result in a game over. More points are awarded if the player manages to clear out multiple lines at once, with a Tetris, or clearing 4 lines at once, being the ultimate combination. In Tengen's version, the game is laid out with the board on the left, a big Tetris tower in the middle, scoring information up top, and a large portion of real estate devoted to a chart that displays the quantity of each tetronimo that has been dropped so far. I'm not really sure what the point of this is, but I guess the developers thought it was important enough to take up half of the screen. Up in the top left is the window which shows which tetromino will drop next. Believe you me, you'll be looking at this area a ton, as it's, in my opinion, the most important aspect of the game to planning your next moves. I sort of wish it was in the top right like I'm used to in other puzzle games, but I adjusted. It's just not really ideal. For some reason in the Tengen version, the tetrominos aren't made of 4 individual blocks like I'm used to. This threw me off a bit and even made it feel slightly more difficult to gauge where a block was going to land, since it didn't quite seem like the game was on a grid. Once I adjusted, it wasn't really a big deal, but I thought it was worth mentioning that it messed me up a bit, as I imagine it would others as well. As you progress and clear out more lines, tetrominos will drop exponentially faster to make the player panic and screw up their game. Completing a stage is as simple as meeting a lines cleared quota. The dancers come out and do their little spiel and it's on to the next stage. Surprisingly, it doesn't give you a fresh slate or an empty board when you start a new level, which kind of irked me a little, but not enough to really fuss about. Though it is kind of jolting to go into an interlude and then get dropped back into the action and forget where your pieces were. I guess it is what it is though. I mean, occasionally you'll feel like you meant to do something else and it was the control's fault. I know I did. But really, losing is more of a reflection of you yourself and the mistakes you made. Tengen's Tetris by no means hinders you with control. It gives you all the tools you need to win, simply by executing basic button inputs. Tengen Tetris feels right, like Tetris should. Thankfully too, there is absolutely no slowdown or screen flicker in the game, as it would absolutely ruin the experience if there were. Tengen Tetris is good, darn good. The only real downside to it is the bleak black background and the poorly located next window in the top left. Really though, it's everything I thought Tetris on the NES should be. Moving on to Nintendo's Tetris, you'll notice it looks pretty darn similar, but there are several gameplay related things that have changed. I think aesthetically, mostly everything is done better in the Nintendo version, from the superior screen layout to the 4-cube tetrominoes. Sure, it still has the Russian identity, but it isn't as in-your-face as Tengen's version. It does still have the cathedral in the distance, but I enjoyed the variety of different little flying animations in the game between stages more than the Russian dancers, personally. Stripping out the Russian identity is sort of subjective as to how important you believe it is to the game's overall visual identity, but to me it loses nothing by dulling it out a bit. I thoroughly enjoy the little flourishes in this version when you clear a line, or how the screen gives a seizure-inducing flash when you get a Tetris. The screen looks so uniform and neat, and I especially enjoy how the next block window is easier to see without taking your eyes off the action. But this isn't really a debate on the look of the game, but rather how the game actually plays, and in all fairness, it's almost indiscernible from the Tengen version in terms of how it controls and responds to the button presses. I had zero issues switching back and forth between the two, which I guess is a good thing, but it also leaves me puzzled as to which version I think has better gameplay. Just adding a little sound effects here and there and changing up Tetromino's primary colors with each stage makes the game feel just slightly more inviting. Honestly though, if you cut out the action only and if the games had no sound effects, music, or extras outside of the main gameplay area, I'd be hard pressed to really even tell any difference. So, the winner of the best gameplay category is... yeah, it's a tie. The games have nearly identical gameplay. I was leaning towards Nintendo, but in the end I decided that giving it the edge simply because I personally like the aesthetic more was sort of petty, considering when it's down to brass tacks, they are essentially the same exact gameplay experience. Next, why don't we move on to the soundtrack? The music in Tetris is always an important aspect in every version of the game that exists, and several different tunes that debuted in the series are downright classics. The Tengen version has 4 different pieces of music in it, the first being Lojinska. I don't personally really like the slow, dour sound of this one. To my ear, it doesn't lend itself to playing a cerebral puzzle game. Bradinsky. It's a high-energy theme, definitely jazzes you up to play the game. Karinka. I like this song, it's very regal and has a nice cheeriness to it. Troika. Seems to be everyone's favorite song in this game, and I'd have to agree, it's mine as well. Also, Tengen's version offers the option to play the game in silence.
Just total silence. Who could play at that game, smart guy?
The Nintendo version, conversely, has 3 themes. Let's take a listen. Music 1. It's simply March of the Sugar Plum Fairy, but much more intense. I love this rendition of the song. Music 2. An extremely enjoyable song and in my opinion the most dynamic in the game. It's the one I often use when I play. Music 3. I don't know why, but I can't shake the feeling that this doesn't belong. It's almost like something you'd hear exploring the ocean, not playing a puzzle game. And I have to give an honorable mention to the high score screen theme. And the winner of the best soundtrack category is Tengen. I think all 4 of the themes in the Tengen version offer something distinct and unique from one another, as well as lending themselves to the cerebral nature of Tetris itself. Good brain music. Let's move along to the features each game has on offer. Starting with the Tengen version, it offers 5 different game modes, with 3 of them being distinct. The one-player mode being exactly what I described earlier, a marathon mode where you see how many lines you can clear before pieces stack up in a manner in which they overflow the board. The vanilla 2-player mode is a competition mode where you can face off against another person. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that this is the reason why the entire half of the screen is empty in 1-player mode. Likely save time and resources on coding. Still, this is an essential feature in any Tetris game. This mode is exactly what you'd expect, competing to see who can clear the most lines. Now this next mode, cooperative as it's called, is extremely intriguing because in all of the other Tetris games I've played, none of them have this particular mode in it. In this mode, you and a second player play a game of Tetris on a bigger board than normal, and each of you are given a tetramino to place. It is fun to work together to get as many lines as possible, but it's too easy to get in each other's way. Either way, this mode alone is reason enough to check out Tengen's version of the game. Nintendo's version keeps it simple by offering 2 modes only, A-Type and B-Type. A-Type is a marathon mode where your aim is simply to clear as many lines as humanly possible. I actually enjoy this single-player mode more so than that of Tengen's version because there are no interruptions in the action by tiny Russian dancers. Simply play until you can't anymore. B-Type is a mode in which the player is given a certain number of lines to clear out. I personally found no real reason to play this one because it doesn't offer much of a challenge and doesn't offer any upside to playing it versus the A-Type. One thing you'll notice is lacking is any semblance of a 2-player mode. This is a head-scratching omission. Even the Game Boy version has a 2-player mode. Say what you want, no 2-player mode is baffling. A game like Tetris is fun enough as a distraction if you're all alone, but competing to see who can clear more lines is an essential part of the Tetris experience. Keeping that feature out of the game is simply pointless. So, who's the king of NES Tetris? While in terms of gameplay I find both of these games to be pretty much identical, I'd have to go with Tengen's Tetris based on its number of features. Both games will individually give you a good game of Tetris, but Tengen's version feels like the more authentic experience with a competitive 2-player mode and music that suits it better. Who would have thought that the version of Tetris Nintendo didn't want you to play ended up being the more fully featured version?
That's a mystery.
Which version of Tetris do you like better? I'd be rather interested in hearing what you have to say. If you like this video, I've got more Versus videos that you can check out if you so wish. Aside from that, I'd like to say thank you very much for watching this episode of Versus. Have a great night.